Hello, everybody, and welcome to your Every Other Day vlog with Andy with Bilibre. We're on our third installment of the rebuttals to Matt's points. Matt is, of course, the user Junker. Was it Junker ZN? Yes, Junker ZN. Again, thanks to Matt for providing just so much content. I mean, this is great. He provided 8 points that were contentions against Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general, and I'm happily hitting them in this. I guess we'll call it a series on Matt's points. Today is number 3, and this might be posted once while I'm in Collision. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm on Twitter at Zukaza. If you want to hit me up regarding these points, happy to hear your concerns or your rebuttals on my rebuttals of Matt's points. That'd be awesome. So let's get into it. We are now on point 3, and he says, there is no regulation, and the regulatory reach of sovereign governments is severely limited. By design, in fact. This is actually a huge problem, because it means that the trading of these coins can be seriously manipulated by big movers, miners, and criminals. Criminal syndicates, in particular, use Bitcoin, Monero, and other cryptocurrencies in ways that are almost untraceable. Where one has fraud and manipulation in a system which goes unanswered, it simply builds forever until it takes down the whole system. That is the nature of fraud. So the very mechanisms that make people believe are good for the likes of Bitcoin, not being under government control, for example, are actually bad because a lack of regulation will ultimately destroy it. You might not notice this as the value goes up, but the very volatility also bleeds non-crypto, real cash, out of the system. So once the new buyers dry up, the whole thing will bleed away to probably something close to $0. There's always nostalgia, but trading cards are also driven by nostalgia, and those are definitely not considered to be currencies. The lack of regulation also makes it impossible to match supply and demand. Economic growth, or contraction, will never match available coinage in any single cryptocurrency. That's a huge problem because it can destroy an economy that relies on it. Not just cause a depression or recession, but completely destroy the economy. So, the issue of regulation is one that we're tackling. I think the cryptocurrency space is tackling 24/7. Matt's right that regulation is necessary, but I think it's only necessary to a point. The cryptocurrencies, so the protocol that underlies Bitcoin specifically, is pretty soundproof. I think that's the wrong word to use. Bulletproof. Let's just say that it has been around for 9 years and it's yet to break, which implies that there's something there of value. The Bitcoin network is capable of securing over an over $200 billion asset, and I mean 200 billion around there is the current market cap for Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin hasn't been broken, it's certainly not because people aren't trying. There's a $210 billion bounty on the Bitcoin economy that could be siphoned off out of thin air if someone were to crack it. So clearly, regulation isn't needed to keep Bitcoin safe. It's not laws, it's not regulators, it's not courts that are making sure Bitcoin doesn't break or that value isn't siphoned away from it. It's literally the code itself that makes it so difficult to break. Not just the coding, but encryption is very important to the sustainability of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, at least those that are valid. So yeah, regulation is necessary in many places. And regulation is also fighting I would say frankly, a losing battle in the drug cartel wars, where cartels are using paper, so fiat currencies, to move around vast amounts of wealth and drugs, guns, sadly people, and they're using paper to do it. So while I understand that we don't want people to be using cryptocurrencies or any money in general for nefarious purposes, money doesn't get to decide that. Money is agnostic, and money should not be deciding what people do with it. What should be deciding what people do with the money is laws, regulations, societal parameters, which are our laws, our regulations. People act, money does not. I don't know who phrased that, but I think it's a good phrase. People are the ones that make decisions. Money is just the tool with which to transfer value. And the dollar has been the de facto tool for this for the transferring of value in many different countries. many different kinds of conflicts, many different kinds of drug wars or human trafficking, all sorts of depravity that goes on in this world is being, people are using the dollar for that, and clearly that's an issue. That people are deciding to use Bitcoin isn't necessarily an issue. The people problem is what we have to tackle first. But actually, what's interesting is that most people that know what they're doing with cryptocurrencies would not think of using it for nefarious purposes. Reason being, it's transparent. The entire Bitcoin blockchain is open to the world. Anybody can take a peek and see what value is moving where. This is the reason why the Dread Pirate Roberts, the guy behind the Silk Road, was captured. And this is also why the enforcers of the regulation itself were caught. So there were 2 law enforcement officials who were apparently also stealing from the government. The people in charge of the laws, the people that were put out to enforce them, were also, it turns out that there were bad apples in the bunch. They tried stealing money, and they were caught because they were using Bitcoin. So clearly, Bitcoin is a terrible method of moving around value if your actions behind them tend to be nefarious. It's just not smart. There are companies out there. One notable one that I've heard many times is Chainalysis, and they're able to trace Bitcoin transactions, and the government leverages their tech in order to capture criminals that are using Bitcoin. So while I understand the concern with cryptocurrencies being used for nefarious purposes, it's not the best way to go about it. But more importantly, you need to deal with the people and not the money. Money needs to serve the money's purposes, which is store of value, hopefully, and ease of use, fungibility, transportability. I mean, all these facets that make a money better than a different money. And to that point, Matt also brought up the issue of trading cards and how at one point they were valuable and now they're no longer valuable, that they can't be used as currency. And the truth is, anything can be used as currency. Cigarettes are used in currency, or cigarettes are used as currency under the right context. One of the famous contexts being prison. If you're in prison, cigarettes are a very valuable currency. Outside of prison, people don't give you much for a cigarette, but apparently in prisons they give you a lot. It's all about context. And clearly, Bitcoin in the real world, so in today's society, Bitcoin is valued at $9,000 a pop. Bitcoin could be used as currency, but I believe in I believe the first thing an asset needs to achieve before moving into the realm of currency, or at least high volume currency, is store of value. Gresham's law applies to everything, and that includes Bitcoin. So Gresham's law is where bad money drives out the good. And this is what it means is that if I have $10 worth of Bitcoin versus $10 worth of, let's just say, a Zimbabwe dollar, what am I going to get rid of first? My Bitcoin, the asset that's appreciating in value, the deflationary currency that is becoming a better store of value as time goes on, or the currency that is quickly losing value and is just a terrible store of value, which is the Zimbabwe dollar? Of course you get rid of the Zimbabwe dollar first. You hold on to things that appreciate in value and you get rid of things that don't. So people aren't eager to get rid of their Bitcoin because the rules that decide how Bitcoin works have been in play for 9 years, and more people agree with the rules. For any other paper currency, the rules are sent from high above, and we hope that those rules aren't changed as time goes on. We hope the currency isn't inflated out of thin air, where more and more units enter the economy and make it worthless. Some economists argue all day that that's the best way to do money. Clearly that's not the case if really what you create is a Pandora's box with the printing machine, and it's only a matter of time before the printed currency is useless. This has happened over and over and over again. I don't see why people continue to think that we're doing it any better this time. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is doing things a little differently. It is turning the concept on its head, where the units are in fact deflationary. There is not one person who can change the system, Change of the system requires a majority, and people are forced to vote with their money and not just with, what's the word? Not just by virtue signaling. You actually have to use your dollar to decide what cryptocurrency will be more valuable. This goes on to Matt's other point, where he was saying that cryptocurrencies are going to sap the value out of the money that we currently have. And that is not true. The way value works is it moves from asset to asset. Value doesn't necessarily die. Value is inherent in the work that people do. A carpenter makes something that's valuable. Somebody will give him something for that, otherwise that carpenter's work wouldn't be valuable. What the person gives the carpenter, we would determine to be money if that thing is agreed to be used by other people within that same society, or the entire economy works on the same thing that was accepted by the carpenter for money. Could be seashells, could be rocks. Rocks are a terrible form of money, but I mean, it could be, you never know. So yeah, moving value from one asset to another isn't a waste. It's actually very important. We as a society want to decide what assets hold our value. You don't want it to be decreed or demanded, because once you get to those points, you end up with things like the Venezuelan bolivar, where this currency is being mandated by the government to be used by its people, as it's quickly losing value because the government has not stopped printing it. Is that the kind of reality that we want for our dollar? Of course not. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. Typically, that's what happens with fiat currencies, but still, the people should be allowed to decide where they want to move their value. And before it was cattle, land is one of the better stores of value, because land is always going to be here with us as long as the planet is still here, and as long as the land isn't eaten up by waters, by rising sea levels, which arguably is partially our fault. So yeah, value will always move from asset to asset. For the reasons I've stated before, Bitcoin is a valid asset to put money into / value into. And yes, one Bitcoin could potentially power an entire economy, or one unit of Bitcoin could potentially power an entire city, even more so an entire small country. And why do I say that? Bitcoin is divisible to the eighth place, and the eighth place of a Bitcoin is actually called a Satoshi. And if one Satoshi is going to be what we start to use as currency, one Bitcoin would have to be worth $910 million, which would effectively make the Bitcoin market cap worth over 16 units. What is that? If 9 zeros gets you to a million, multiply that twofold, it's a ridiculous number. The world's market cap hasn't gotten to this number yet, even in derivatives and nonsensical numbers that we're playing around with, just fictional assets that we're trading for. So yeah, Bitcoin would have to be worth a lot more if the eighth unit is going to be not enough to handle all the value that Bitcoin has within the entire market cap. So yeah, it is an issue, but guess what? Once Bitcoin does get to that market cap, we can easily code in more zeros at the end of it and call them, mega satoshis, giga satoshis, micro satoshis. It's fine. There is no problem adding more zeros, as we are not creating more Bitcoins, yet all we're doing is cutting more places behind the unit of a Bitcoin. So the same way that if you get a gold bar and you cut it in eight pieces, you have 1/8 of a bar of gold. The same way you have 1/8 of a Bitcoin at the eighth unit of measure. You could go further down, and it's possible to get there on a calculator. So I don't see why we couldn't get there on a financial system. It's not an issue. Deflationary currencies have been here with us since the times of gold and silver and other precious metals. So we are not strangers to the concept of deflationary currencies. Saying that a deflationary currency would pin us to an arbitrary unit of entire market cap is not true. So yeah, we could break through that barrier if Bitcoin gets ridiculously huge. If the fundamentals stay as they are, if consensus is still in play for many more years, and maybe we'll get to that market cap and we'll deal with it when we get there. But it wouldn't be an issue. And of course, adding more zeros, making it further divisible, would also be an exercise in majority consensus. We wouldn't just do it before, we wouldn't just do it because one guy says we're going to do it. Let's see, make sure I hit every single point here. Yeah, I think that was it. I think that's everything. Again, Matt, thank you so much for bringing these points to my attention. This is a great exercise for me in thinking about this stuff. Matt, you're more than welcome to rebuttal in the comments, and I'd be happy to hit this again. Thanks to you, I have some juicy content to bite into and provide, and I'd be happy to get more of that from you. This has been good. So thank you, everybody. Please like if you like. Please share with a friend. Please subscribe. And until next time, see ya.